This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
Hey, everybody, this is the Cliff Yates Show. I have a special guest today. I'm really excited, as much for myself as for you, because I know I'm going to learn a lot. It's just something I'm interested in. He has degrees in cell biology, and he's so educated in the realm of health and cell health, cellular health, and what it means to our longevity. And I think we'll talk today about the 5 pillars of longevity, which he talks about. He has too much knowledge to go into one session, but let's see what we can do. Let's just bring him on board and get after it. Mr. Daniel Tausan, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's good to be here, Cliff.
Yeah, I'm really excited today because I just finished it's called the Primal Health Coach Institute by Mark Sisson. I don't know if you know him, but he's kind of into longevity and primal health and kind of how we were programmed and kind of how we can, even though our cells and our genes and our DNA, we might be predisposed to certain things, we can affect how those genes are expressed. And it seems like that's kind of your what you're focused on, right?
Absolutely. I do love all the nitty gritty, the molecular details of what makes up our existence. It's what is an unsolvable puzzle in a lot of ways. You know, one lifetime is not enough. One mind is not enough. And so this is the beauty of today, where the ability to share so much information, but also get down into the molecular details that make each of us unique. You know, kind of like you mentioned, we do have aspects in which you can't interact with within the conscious state. You can't decide, okay, I want my nose to be this way unless you get plastic surgery. You can't decide, I want to be, 7 foot tall unless you're born again, because there's not even surgeries that let you get that tall, right? There's only limited amounts that we can do, and all that comes at a consequence.
Yes.
Hats off to the individuals that can perform those techniques. But the question is how much can we, with our conscious state, interfere or attenuate some of the short givings, or really push to the best that we can live. That's really what I'm interested in, is how to get people living at their best, at their optimum living, so that when I see you, that you're in a great state, you can tell me things that are exciting your life. So then that's awesome. I can feed off you and I get interested. And if you're not in a great state, well, then I'm the guy that you should be talking to, because I will redirect you so that you're growing in a way in which will have a fruitful timeline, have a timeline that is free of disease, and that you still have your cognitive function when you're 80.
Yeah,
That's the name of the game.
That's the name of the
That's
game,
the name of the game.
man.
When you're 80 years old, can you still have a conversation with the rest of us? To me, that's a big deal.
I mean, my mom was just here at 88, right? She goes in swimming, and then she's like doing what she says I inspired her, but now she's inspiring me. She's on the treadmill, walking 3 miles, and she, I guess through me, she got into this health and fitness thing when she was in her 60s, but she was really befuddled and kind of confused as to why all her friends were like, they don't have any mindset to want to be healthy. They're like, well, what, at our age, what does it matter? And she's just like, why do people think that way? And I go, I don't know, but a lot of people do. And man, I'm not about that. And I'm like you, Daniel. I'm like, I'm 60, I'm going to be 67. And I since some of my lifestyle has now given me so much energy and so much vitality. And I just want to share that with other people because it's exciting, right? So I want to talk, you're into stem cell treatments, right? Do you know all about that?
My graduate studies were in a very particular type of stem cell called the mesenchymal stem cell. If you're familiar with MSCs, they're one of the most, sought after clinical trial type of stem cells, and it's a type of stem cell that is present on around a blood vessel, right? Fancy name is perivascular cell.
Perivascular.
And so, and so the mesenchymal stem cell is, you have lots of these perivascular cells, and some of them are more, call it potent than others, right? Potency in terms of the ability to divide into more than just, one other cell type.
Right.
And so everywhere there's a blood vessel, there's an opportunity for the mesenchymal stem cells to be present. And lo and behold, what are some things that help increase the number of these stem cells? It's being cardiovascularly fit. So high cardiovascular fitness is tied in with a higher amount of these cells present all throughout your body. And the thing is that as an adult, you have stem cell niches, right? Different from the embryonic stem cells. You have an adult stem cell in the crypt, intestinal crypt. Liver is very unique in the way it acts like a stem cell, because the majority of liver cells can act like a stem cell for other liver cells, specifically hepatocytes, not other parts of the liver, right? Because there's ducts and other things. So if anyone's going to be like, "Oh, this guy's not good at cell biology," I'm trying to keep it somewhat simple, but
Yeah, but it's hard.
without too much jargon.
Is there any? Not to interrupt you, but I want to ask you an opinion about this, because I really didn't look into this too much. I had a friend who he's had knee trouble, so he was getting these stem cell injections. But Tony Robbins was talking about, and I noticed this because I was watching, I think it was the Masters, and then I saw, oh my God, there's Arnold Palmer. He's teeing off again, and so he talked about how Arnold Palmer he couldn't even walk really anymore, and then so he wasn't like doing the opening tee shots anymore, and then he went and got these stem cell injections or some kind of stem cell treatment, and now he's playing 18 holes again. Have you heard of this or?
Yeah. So I mean, the field of stem cell biology is massive.
Right?
Yeah, and depending on what clinic you go to, there's going to have different ways in which they're going to treat the cells that they have acquired. And some cells are better than others. So I would say if I was to rank it at the top right now, it comes out that your own bone marrow acts as the best stem cell possible.
Oh.
But it's not very accessible treatments, especially within North America. You might have to go other places to be able to do these very laborious and difficult procedures. What's very common and sold is umbilical cord stem cells.
Yes, yeah, that's what everybody hears about. Yeah,
and right. And so there's a little bit of misconception, right? So keep in mind that when you get the stem cell, that stem cell never actually engrafts in you, if that makes sense. It never, that cell never becomes a part of you. Rather, the cell releases goodies, it releases factors in which you're hoping is going to help you interact and heal. And so in some cases, there has been some benefit, but with if you go to clinical.gov, you'll see that there's over 700 trials of MSCs year in, year out. And there isn't that much headway made in it because of the difficulty in really getting the individual to not see this as just a injection which you have to quickly ramp up your immune system to deal with. And so in some cases, that's good enough, where your immune system is actually having a response in regards to this this multifaceted, call it, goodies of growth factors, of things that will stimulate your collagen, things that will protect your cells. And so there are different labs that have figured out how to be able to stimulate the cells before they give them to you, in which helps them have a better regenerative response. So it's not just this call it immune response that you're having, that you actually are getting a benefit from it. And so this now comes into is it better to get peptide treatment, or is it better to get a stem cell injection? It really is up to the amount of testing and biochemical expertise that you are surrounded with, that you'll be able to know what best to take. And this is where I come in. This is where I support, where I give my my best analysis of what is in front of you, and then send as people have come to and tried different stem cell treatments, which ones have been let's say more worthwhile pursuing than not. And sometimes there just isn't let's say the possibility for that region, if someone's messed up, let's say tendon and shoulder very drastically, you might have to try a couple different avenues before you might see the results that you're hoping for. It's not this holy grail that people think it is, right? Stem cell is used in a way in which to get research funding.
Yeah,
right? It's all just cell biology, right? So it's also very exciting, but there's also a lot of red tape around it. That's why you might have to travel to other places to be able to access some of the most innovative. And you also have to be very careful with what you're getting. Often what you're getting is kind of like the vitamin and kind of supplement industry today, where the majority, somewhere like 70 to 80%, you're simply peeing out, or it's coming out of your body one way or another. You're not absorbing it. Same way with these stem cell treatments, you might be take $10,000, put in a blender, and that's really what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's a wild west, and this is where a big part comes in is, to take care of the machine that you have at the moment, and then how to best be able to support that machine so that you understand really what you're working with. Because kind of like we were saying just a little bit earlier, each part of the body has a reserve pool of stem cells, but for example, the heart doesn't. So there is no heart stem cell. There's no cell that will make a new myocardiocyte. So
Right.
if you injure the
Okay.
heart, you're going to get
Yeah.
a scar or fatty infiltrate that's going to be present within that absent tissue. And so this is why you never want to take anything that can risk anything injuring your heart,
That's
your
right.
anything to
Because
do
there's
with the
no
neck.
regenerative stem cells that can do anything for it.
Exactly. And so in muscle, for example, phenomenally well regenerative. Brain, not so much. You do have certain parts of the brain that can do a decent job at healing, other parts not at all. And how to be able to work with, for example, one thing that happens quite a bit for as we get older is the joints, right? And so how to best
Yes.
take care of those.
Yeah.
And so there definitely are ways, there are ways to be able to support it. There is a very thin hyaline cartilage around the joints, synovial joints. And
Yeah.
so that part needs there's no vascular component to that. And so it needs compression in order to be able to get exchange for nutrients and gases.
Ah.
And this is a big part where small little movements when you're taking your supplements in order to be able to get to the very specific area, as well as there are some very key, for example, like alpha-2 macroglobulin is a key protein you want to know in your blood and what level it's at. So your liver is going to support having that protein. Are you supporting your liver? If you are, then that is going to support your joints. And sometimes what might help for individuals, like you mentioned, you have a friend there that got the stem cell treatment. Now he's up and running. I've heard very similar things, and I've had quite a few individuals that are in their 60s. They like playing tennis. They'll go get a PRP, platelet-rich plasma.
Right.
And, they'll get tennis elbow and all these problems. They get their platelet-rich plasma, no problem. They're playing tennis for, all of May, all of June. So, these are sort of the avenues that are available. But it's also very interesting as, what's the simplest way you can go about it? Is it just a collagen supplement with a little bit of skipping that's going to cause all the problems away? Maybe the right exercise. That's, I would say, always better than an invasive type of approach, which could have some, unintended consequences.
Yeah. Let me interrupt there. So yeah, because I had tennis elbow, man, and then I researched the hell out of it. When you're dealing with a tendon, right, it's hard to get blood to it, so it's hard to heal. Like, a break will heal faster than a tendon. And so I had, man, it was so bad. So I quit tennis for a year, but I didn't. What I learned was you can't just immobilize it. You need to work it and exercise it. And all these people, put this band on it, it'll relieve but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to rehab it and get it healthy again. So I did a lot of stretching and certain exercises for the top and then also the back. And then, but a year later, now I'm back stronger than ever and no problem, no pain. So I felt that was the best way to go, was to use stretch and exercise to heal it, and not a band that would tighten around the nerve or whatever. But any thoughts on that? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Muscle, very thankfully, is very simple in terms of its like gross anatomical function, right?
Yeah.
On the molecular scale, it's actually doing quite a bit more. But for the muscle, it has one function: it's to contract.
Right.
And so, and the nice thing about it, if we know what muscle is a problem, if you have tennis elbow, if it's on the inside, the ulna side, then what we have to do is the antagonistic motions to be able to strengthen the opposite side.
Yeah, that's what I did.
So often
Yeah.
if it's exactly. So, and this is my recommendation for any kind of muscular components is to use the gym, use the weight room, use physical therapy in order to be able to offset that, avoid sort of the biochemical approaches, unless there really is some kind of issue where, let's say, malformation has happened or growth or calcium deposit that you just can't break down otherwise.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And what I would have gotten you to do, I would have gotten you to do a lot of isometric contraction. For example, you would hold yourself in a chin-up position for an extended period of time. And what that would do is help strengthen your tendons like no tomorrow.
I did that.
So we did this with,
I did that. Yeah.
Excellent. There you go.
It worked. Well, you got to be patient. Those things don't heal. You got to be patient with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the jiu-jitsu guys, They do. I've gotten to do them to do quite a bit of like, a long, exhausted hangs where they hold themselves in a position. And these guys are some of the most notorious grips on the planet. Like when they grab you, like if you don't know what you're doing, you're done. And they're notorious when they get their hands on you. And this is it, right? They're not big guys.
No.
Like we're talking 140-pound gentleman is absolutely devastating because like his grip, his tendon strength is through the roof, and that's something you can train, right?
Yeah, and some of these things that and thank God that I've learned and done by accident, right? So last year, I tweaked my back as I do on occasion, like once a year, and so I have a bar here. So I started hanging, and and I would only hang. It turned out this is the best thing to do. I started hanging on the bar, for like 20, 30, 40 seconds at a time, and I would do that 4 or 5 times throughout the day. And I was trying to get better for this golf tournament with my cousins that I was going to be going to. And so I did that for the month before that. And so, man, it really helped. And then, I hadn't hung for a couple of days, but I drove the 3 hours to where I was golfing. And then when I hugged my mom and my cousins, they, I didn't notice it, but they all said, are you taller? So, I mean, that hanging really must have had an effect on my height or my posture, right?
Absolutely can. My only worry for you would be if you're hanging, but you're not engaging your scapula,
right. Yeah. No, I make sure.
shoulder.
I kind of looked into that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to pull your bone out of your socket there, but
No.
otherwise, yeah, if you're hanging there, we do our spine gets quite compressed.
Yeah.
Actually, if you the average posture is like it's sort of a hunched over kind of C shape.
Yeah.
And if you take a look, sort of notoriously, if you want to know about health, you just have to take a look at the problems around you. You have an idea of what people are going through and what to avoid. And so at the hip, we can actually get close to half an inch. If we just fix the hip posture, the spine will have a little bit more ability to stand upright. Yeah, and so hanging helps. Hanging helps a lot because that weight pulls down. And then something very simple is just bringing your legs behind you and then bring them slightly in front, so you get a little bit of a.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to try that.
We have an anterior chain and a posterior chain. Yeah, so we have these two massive, called neurological like wiring for the way our biomechanics works, and so just getting that. It's not don't swing.
No.
But contract the back, contract
the
hamstrings, contract the calves, and controlled, and then just very slightly. It doesn't have to be difficult.
No.
It's just so that the nervous system has the ability to kind of dangle back and forth, and then so it can pull down
a little bit of
with your hang.
Oh man, I'm going to do that for sure. Hey, I want to ask you if there's, I think because it seems like God, all the stuff that you talk about. So I finished this. So originally, a long story short, when I got interested in, these kind of dieting, through nutrition. And so my dad died of heart disease. And I thought, well, in the ICU, I don't want these stints and I don't want all these tubes. I can't be here. I can't find myself doing this. So I had watched this special, Forks Over Knives with these two heart surgeons. And they were kind of, saying how you could reverse and even stop heart disease with nutrition. And it's the number one killer for men and women. And so I went initially strict vegan, and all my numbers became great, except for my glucose, my sugar, my A1C, and so that was still kind of high because I was eating so many pastas. And so when I went into this new training under the Primal Health, I had no idea that, and maybe you can affirm or disaffirm this, that our brain really would rather run on fat and ketones. That's the preferred form of fuel. Is that true?
So fatty acids can't cross the blood-brain barrier.
Okay, fatty acids.
It's not that. Yeah, so it's not the brain runs as an energy source on fat, and nutrition is a topic we can spend probably a full week just talking about.
I know.
Start scratching the surface of what really we're talking about. But what I'll say, one of the worst things that nutritional science has done is that it has put fat as a macronutrient.
Yeah.
Fat is so complex in terms of how our body uses it that only triglycerides, which then get broken down into these fatty acids, are used as an energy source. All the other fat metabolites that are present within our diets are used for our composition.
Gotcha.
are used for our makeup of our body. So when you look at a brain, it's primarily fat and protein.
Right.
And so you need to eat and consume things in which your body can then convert that into the brain matter itself, which is key. So there's, I'm just now going back to your very specific question. I have been absolutely hammering at this for over a decade, well before I think the keto and everything else kind of like pick up traction. Within my studies where, you would read that the glucose, the brain prefers glucose. And so I'm like, where in an experimental setting has anyone ever showed this?
Yeah.
And you can very easily look at the experiments and instead of saying that the brain prefers glucose, you can simply interpret it as glucose hijacks the brain.
Right.
The pathway when glucose is present overrides that of the keto pathway.
Yeah.
And it's designed that actually when we have carbohydrates present within our environment, that we shut that system down. Now, it makes complete sense.
Okay,
when
good.
we're thinking in terms of in like an evolutionary scale, why this happens in mammalian biology, because, when fruit is plentiful, let's say the main source of carbohydrates to our ancestral diets, without too many inferences, when fruits, they're not year round, when they're plentiful, we want to eat and consume as much as possible.
As much as possible.
And
correct.
we want to store the fat. We also want to activate, when you eat the carbohydrates, a lot of growth signals to say, hey, this is the time to grow. Like a tree ring across the season grows, the human being does the same thing, or at least it used to. But now with what's available to us, we don't go through this cycle, and because we end up with tons of problems. I'll call it the modern, the modern lifestyle.
Standard American diet, the sad diet. Yeah, I mean that's just
the sad diet. Yeah, exactly. And so ketones are key, and this has been known for, I think, well over a decade in terms of experimental science, that ketones, and if we can talk about the specific ones, right, the beta hydroxybutyrate, right, that one is not only an energy source, but very importantly, even possibly more importantly, is that it acts like a signaling molecule. And so I'll go a little bit into the nitty gritty here because I find it interesting.
No, please. Me too. I love it.
Is that now when this ketone comes and is present and the brain has it within a certain concentration around, it goes across the membrane and it hits a little receptor.
Yes.
That receptor then can finally go to the DNA and say, hey, we're going to turn on this programming. And what is the programming? It's a neuroprotective programming. It's a programming that helps clean out and keep that system, call it idyllic, within maintaining cognitive function for long periods of time, right? And this is why, when you have academics or at least successful individuals that are in front of their computer for long periods of time, having to do high amount of cognitive tasks over and over again, the individuals do better when they aren't consuming carbohydrates, right? This is why they'll absolutely abuse coffee.
Yes.
Coffee suppresses appetite. Coffee allows for alertness to stay present within a long amount of time. But a bigger part is that it suppresses appetite. And so that their ketones can stay present within their body, helping maintain a certain level of cognition the entire time that they're present. And so the brain thrives on glucose too. And so for an athlete to try and just keto adapt is very difficult, right? And I do know that, for like some ultra endurance athletes, and some bodybuilders, I mean, Dom D'Agostino is a big guy that showcased that you can, be fully in a ketogenic state and still deadlift, 700 plus pounds. You can be in a fasted state for, 7 days and still lift that without losing it. But, it's this sort of aspect of how can you use what's in front of you to your benefit. And it's not necessarily that you can simply, like light switch, flip back and forth. You must train your system in order to be able to go into a metabolic flexibility.
That's I have to jump in just because you get me so excited about this, because the program that I went through, this is what Mark Sisson's whole focus is on is mitochondrial flexibility, right? So that that's his whole message. And so he's like not zero carb, but low enough carbs so that your body can be efficiently burning carbs when you do have them. But I want to ask you, because what he does is, and I tried it and I still do it, it's been working for me, so I feel that I'm fat adapted. And so you let me know. So what he does, he doesn't call it a traditional fasting, because what he does is he has coffee in the morning, so I've been having that, and he has a little bit of heavy cream with it, so of fat, so you're not really spiking an insulin response. and then he doesn't have his first meal until 12 or 1. So I've been doing that 16-8 thing, and I'm really fascinated that I can actually have I go into a workout and go into the gym with extreme energy and strength, and I've been really haven't had any carbohydrates for 15 hours. So that is a kind of I have to be switching really to be fat adapted at that point, right?
You can be. I'd be a little bit apprehensive with the cream in the milk, right? Keep in
Ah,
mind that cream is massive amounts of calories. And though you might not spike insulin, you're still starting digestion and like liver programming. Like
I
you're asking
gotcha.
your
Yeah.
liver to turn on for nutrient assimilation. And so, on a longevity program that I'll put you on, I would say you can easily have, black coffee. You can put in, for example, a teaspoon of cacao. That's my mix.
Oh, good. Yeah,
A
I could
pinch
just
of
I could,
salt,
I
and
actually
you can
love
add some
black.
other things to it, like
Yeah, I actually love black coffee. I can do black coffee. So then we're getting into how many
yeah.
hours do
And
you
so there's
think?
nothing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so nothing's wrong with having a little bit of cream, as a starter for also for the digestive portion, but you're going to get a different mileage out of your system by doing so. And so I would say that if you are not living the life of 16 and 8,
Yeah.
you got bamboozled by marketing, because this is basic biology in which you're just living respectful to what we are as an operating system.
Oh,
Your
you're saying
biology teacher failed you.
so that's good. You affirm that. You think that's good. The 16-8 is good.
I've been doing it for over a decade and a half,
Oh,
and
that's
I
great to
walk
hear.
around,
That's great to
yeah,
hear.
shredded all my entire life.
Yeah,
I don't
now
do
I
too
am too.
much
Yeah.
like crazy exercise, and it's just a matter of understanding how to set your metabolism. So I set the
Yeah.
metabolism, and then I don't abuse it with the food, and asking your body to eat at 8, eat at 12, eat at 5, eat again at 9. Um, it is not a matter of who you are. You will get a disease faster.
Yes.
Period.
Man.
It's very simple. It's how the liver functions. It's how your intestines function. It's how the hormonal cascade behind it functions. And if you bought into breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you bought into it,
Yes.
and you will reap the consequences of this lifestyle. So the 16-8 thing, even though intermittent fasting has gotten a lot of trend, and that's great. I'm very happy to hear, a lot more people talking about it, a lot more people are conscious about, when they're eating. To me, it's kind of funny because it's not fasting.
That's not fasting.
You're
No.
still eating 2 meals. You're still
Yeah.
eating 2 meals a day. To me, I would call it respectful eating, or just a basic default. Hey, you finally caught up to physiology
Yeah.
that we've known for over 50. I would say over 100 years. This isn't new, right? Like in the 1920s, you can see documents that would describe diabetes, it's describe overconsumption,
Yeah.
hepatology textbooks.
So what's your eating
We've
window?
confused a lot of things.
Mine is like so 8 at night until noon the next day, or sometimes 1. What is yours?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of indulge. So I have 2 meals a day, and then I'll have 1 meal a day, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I want to have, for example, I love having eggs, burrito, beans, kind of style. I'll just have that around 11 o'clock. It also depends when I woke up and how much exercise did I get the day before, or was it just sitting on the computer? And then I'll have a meal sometime around, 5, 6. So those are the 2 meals, and that's more than plenty. I would call
Yep.
myself, I'm enjoying food. Like I live life to also
Oh,
enjoy.
it tastes
And
so
and
great. I mean, yeah, the flavors. People. Well, I'm glad, man. You're really affirming everything that I've gone through. This Mark's program is 7 months long to get through this thing, but it's all based on what you just said, and also I was talking to my mom about this too. So we actually go into, if you're doing that 68, so every day you're really going into autophagy, right? Can you kind of explain that to people, autophagy?
yeah, so every single cell, other than the red blood cell, has a lot of organelles, a lot of like moving parts.
Organelles, that's
You
right. I
think of
forgot
like
about that. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll try to avoid using some of the jargon here,
Oh,
but imagine you have
yeah.
a factory,
Daniel, is the
and you
organelle,
got
is that like, that's mitochondria, right? Is also an organelle?
absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So mitochondria is pretty much the most important one to know. But like if you were to look at a cell and go super deep as much as you possibly can in terms of magnification, what you would see is just it's like sacks on sacks, like
Yes.
fat membranes that are, and it's just constant membranes that you see in the cell. And you're like, what are all these membranes? And so the most important one, I think the one that takes the center stage, is going to be the mitochondria.
Yeah.
But as a cell biologist, like I don't want to complicate too much, but it's there. It's all of it,
Yeah.
right? So you get and let's maybe break it down in a little bit of an easier sense like this, right? We have the DNA, which I would say is top priority. That's not allowed to get damaged.
That's right.
If DNA gets damaged, you no longer have the reproductive capability in the cell. It's not the brain of the cell. It's actually the gonads of
Right.
the cell,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
That makes sense. No.
So the brain of the cell actually functions on the outside of the membrane and on every single one of these membranes that's on the inside of the cell. And it's making decisions constantly about how to interact and engage with its environment. And the proteomic component, so we have the DNA. If it gets damaged, bad news. We have the proteomic component, which is quite resilient. It doesn't shift so easily with your lifestyle. And it'll take a long time of you to, let's say, abuse your eating or doing certain things in your life for the proteome to start switching. That's when you start seeing your blood tests shift. You'd be like, okay, you're trending towards bad biological age. So if the proteome is shifting, we're like, okay, we have a good idea of your outcomes. But it can take a beating, and it can go back to a better stature or better standing. And then the part that's the least important, but still insightful, is how the metabolites are present. And those can come in massive amounts of concentration differences. One that you might get in your normal blood test that people know is creatinine, right? It is
Yeah.
the byproduct of creatine.
Yeah.
And it'll, by medical standards, doctors are trained that when this is high, it's a kidney problem. But I've had multiple military men come with their blood test and say, hey, you know what? Like, I don't want to take this drug. My kidneys, I think, are fine. But I've been told by 3 doctors that, my kidneys are about to explode, and this doesn't seem right. And it's because they did 7 hours of training. They did 7 hours of training, multiple days in a row. Their body is under massive catabolism, right?
Yeah.
It's a psychological type of training.
That's
They're not
right.
trying to get
Yeah.
strong. They're trying to put them to the point of, can you deal with, massive exhaustion? Can you deal with your,
Yeah.
your body breaking down, and can you recuperate after? And so those metabolites can be massive concentration differences. But for the average individual that's quite sedentary, the soccer moms and the stay-at-home dads or the work-from-home dads, if they have a creatinine level that's massive, okay, yeah, that probably is a good indicator that is a problem. But again, that's just an example of the metabolites can have quite big swings. So in terms of importance, DNA number 1, proteome number 2, and then metabolome number 3. And so these are things that you can go get from molecular testing. This is what I do for
Right.
people. I put all the information together. I give them a story, and then with my coaching background, I help guide them towards the simple things. But like, hey, listen, the food, the movement, what other things can be done, the herbals, the mental aspects, the beliefs, the limiting beliefs. And so the molecular components are pretty fascinating because they've really showcased to me almost a lack of application in today's day and age. This is why I've gone my own way, because the individuals that I've worked with have showcased that we are very linear in our thinking with what's available to us. And so unless
Yes.
someone really cares about the biology and sits with you, you're not going to get some of this cool information out of it. Or you're not going to know which test to get
Yeah.
to be able to pull out really cool information. So one interesting, like I mentioned earlier, alpha-2 macroglobulin is an awesome blood value. Why? Because it gives you 3 points of information, at least the way I've analyzed all the biomarkers.
Is that APB?
One, and very
Is that
simple, is it A2M?
A2M? Okay. Some of these things I've heard from Dr. Peter Attia, who's really studying longevity, and because he talks about these things. But yeah, I like it.
Yeah, longevity is kind of a consequence to trying to understand the cell, right? And he is kind of interested in nitty gritty into what we are. You end up into longevity because, if you get a blood test, here's sort of the idea is that one, it's a risk assessment. Hey, is this going to cause a problem?
Right. Yeah.
That's the least interesting way to communicate it.
Correct.
Right? If I tell you, hey, you have a 40% increased chance of getting arthritis, you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, am I going to get it or not? Like, this was a one marker. Like, how valuable is this? So the risk values I've found just go over people's heads, right?
Yeah.
If you tell me you have a risk, for cancer, they don't hear anything else other than the word cancer. So
Right.
that's one way, and that's one kind of failure of the translation of biological knowledge is in this idea of risk for disease. The other one that's more, I think, a lot easier to kind of grasp is just biological age. Hey, you
Right.
look like a 30-year-old. Hey, you look like an 80-year-old. Hey, you look like you're 150. This makes no sense. So in that aspect, age becomes an easy way to communicate biological complexity.
Yes.
And this is where I think a lot of individuals that are simply interested in life, they're interested in what we are as human beings, right? I think at one point in time, all of us came to this planet, we're like, what the hell's, what's going on?
Yeah. Right.
And you grow up and you sort of get sidetracked with having to, hey, get a house, get a, make kids and other things, right? And so, but that within us is still there of like really what's going on, what's this mystery that we're experiencing. And age again is something that we're all experiencing. Everyone can
Yeah.
see it, right? It is uh, key to our life, to our experience here. And then the other aspect that I spent over 5 years going through probably over, I don't know, something like 2,000 to 4,000 articles about blood and exercise.
Yes.
So when you do movement, what shifts in your blood? What
Yeah.
shifts in different cell types? What cell types are contributing to that shift in the blood? And so when you exercise, your muscles produce uh, proteins and metabolites. They're given a very specific name called myokines. So it's
Yes.
these cellular bits that the muscle produces into the blood. Your liver produces things into the blood. They're two of the major contributors that are blood. Your heart produces things and releases into the blood. And so all this now acts to be able to affect different organs. There's a crosstalk happening in
Yes.
the event of exercise, and then in the aftermath of exercise, and then in the adaptation of exercise.
Yeah.
And so when you give me a blood value, one, does it give me a risk value? Often it does. Does it
Right.
give me a biological age? About 1/3, maybe like 1/5 of the time, it can be used to assess biological age. Not every biomarker can be used to assess biological age. And then like 1 in 10 is an excellent fitness indicator. Has your blood adapted to be able to show that you've had a positive response to your exercise? And
Yeah.
so most people think the more exercise, the better. But I
No.
have one story here for you with a lady that she's super fit lady, right? CrossFit, very go-getter, started feeling extremely sick after every time she did her exercise, which kind of broke her heart. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not able to participate in the thing then which helps me, feel and, as a part of my identity, help me feel like I'm growing and what I look forward to. And so she got a very extensive blood panel, about 300 biomarkers,
Jeez.
which I had an opportunity to comb through for her.
Good.
And vast majority of what was present in her blood was completely normal. And then there's just a few weird, very weird specific things all associated with the liver. And what is the problem that we found is that she has not very high iron. It's there. It's maybe tiny little bit elevated, but very, very low iron binding proteins that are supposed to be produced from the liver. So, if for anyone that's kind of saying like, what's the problem there? Well, iron, if it's not controlled, if you just have free iron available within your system, it's going to strip everything,
Yes.
non-specifically,
I read that.
proteins,
Yeah.
membranes, DNA, whatever it can get close to. It's an extreme oxidizing agent. And so we just address the liver. Do we know exactly what we're supposed to do? No, but we know things that help stimulate the liver. We know things that help to detox liver. We know antivirals, and we do a slow blanket approach of, hey, you need to keep trying different things to see what works out for you, or go get an insane amount more molecular testing until you find the exact thing, and then go from there. But that could be years, right? And depending on what you have access to, that might not really be feasible either, right? Try to
Yeah.
play the game of chase out the rabbit down the rabbit hole. So a very simple approach. She did different regimes of liver support supplements, liver support herbals, liver support diet, and within about 4 months, she started going back at it with higher intensities and didn't have a problem. And so, what exactly did she pull into her system that caused that issue? I have no idea.
Yeah.
She may figure it out one day if she engages in it again and it comes to her, and I'll be very grateful if you share that with me. Right?
Yeah.
Again, I I act as a nexus point, right? When I find that someone is able to do something, kind of underdog story where they bring, they regenerate their system. I act as sort of a harbinger to be able to be like, okay, well, we'll keep you anonymous, but we'll be able to
Yeah.
share that story, forward, and that biology and that possibility, because the fundamental science of like, hey, we got a lot of complexity. Let's draw a line here to figure out, like what's the trend, exclude all the outliers. That's been done.
Yeah.
So we got the trends. We can't keep excluding the outliers.
No, that's right.
Because
Mark talks also about,
That's
let me interrupt you there. Mark Sisson talks about a lot of people get into the chronic cardio, right? They're doing too much. They want to be in that treadmill for, 2 hours. It's just too much, so we can stress the body in a healthful way. He's like, and I found myself, I was like, wow, God, I do my strength training workouts and I'm only in there like 40 minutes. And then through his training, he kind of said, yeah, you shouldn't be in the gym that long. And so what's your feeling on that? Sometimes we're involved in chronic cardio, right?
I am a firm proponent. As an ex-athlete, I hate dilly-daddling in the gym. So if you have a gym workout, you should never be in there longer than an hour. That includes warm-up.
That's what I say.
Actual lifting workout time should be somewhere around 30 to 40 minutes.
Yep, that's what I do.
If you have, for example, I'll call them like performance days, where you're going into the gym with, let's say, a set workout in which you're trying to beat the performance, which is an important thing to have, let's say maybe once a month.
Right, that's right.
That should be about a 20 to 30 minute workout max.
Yeah.
In which you prepare for, and then you go. And we've had a lot of those. So I used to help my brother in his personal training. He had a gym called Revamp Fitness. That's like well over a decade ago. And we would have performance exercises. We would give them different names: the derby, the 300, and individuals would know where they rank up in these exercises, and they could see themselves on the leaderboard in comparison to other individuals. I was a water polo athlete, and in my early 20s, I smashed all the leaderboards because I was close to Olympic level, right? And so my cardiovascular fitness in water polo, you push it quite high. And so in a lot of these, these 20 to 30 minute, high stress workouts, I was able to really push the limit. So people could have an idea of where they rank up. And then after, let's say, training for 3-4 months, when they go back to the workout, they see how much they've improved.
That's right.
And that's a big part for people to understand, because the aesthetics are often what drive people's motivation.
Yeah.
But they're consequence to good performance and good biomechanics, good technique, good lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
And when you don't focus on the aesthetics come the fastest. That's the funniest thing, right? When you focus on, hey, I just want to smash my 300 ranking, I want to beat Daniel, I want to get up at the top. The consequence of the aesthetics comes rapid. And
yes.
So this is where, I have a massive disdain for the gym too, because I know a lot of people like just go hang out in there.
Yeah.
Right? They're
socializing. They're in there for 2 hours. Yeah.
And I'm like, and so you have a lot of things that I think you've sniped very well within what I would say is the real science, right? The science that stands true and is very easy to understand, and that the other part is it looks like science but it's marketing, and it's kind of pretending to be it. You seem to have navigated yourself through it, so great job there.
Yeah.
And the cardio aspect, there isn't really a length of time in which I would say you need to do the cardio or not do the cardio. 15 minutes of cardio to raise your heart rate is good enough to be able to maintain a phenomenal cardiovascular system. If you've never built out a cardiovascular system, you should do a regime of training of low intensity, some intervals, and then what I would call like stamina days.
Yeah, that's what I'm on an island here, so what I do is I jump rope. I love jumping rope, man, and you can actually get great skill at doing it. I just loved, but my jump rope sessions are probably only 15 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's excellent for the joints. So it's long term very good. That's one ability that no one should lose. And when you've lost the ability to skip, that should be an indicator that you've done things quite poorly in terms of the aging process. So good on you there again too.
Hey, water polo guys are always, man, they're so ripped, right? Just from treading water for so long, right? It's got to be the best. I've never seen people more ripped than water polo guys.
I mean, the treading water becomes easy, right? And if you look at the European guys, they're not ripped. But if you look at the North American guys, they're all shredded, which is kind
Yeah.
of funny. So the European guys have a lifestyle. They become professional. They have the professional leagues there.
Oh, I
And
didn't know
something very
that. Oh,
interesting
yeah.
actually happens. Well, they'll have a season off. They enjoy their ice creams, a lot of the
Oh,
sweets, and different types of food. And so they'll put a lot of subcutaneous fat on.
yes.
But when they go back to their sport, the subcutaneous fat never gets used. Only intracellular fats gets used. So they're
Yeah.
super fit. They're they're the best in the world at their sport, but they look out of shape
They
because
look
of
out
this
of shape.
subcutaneous
Yeah.
fat.
God, something.
Now the North American guys have a certain culture to maintain that. They get shredded, and then if they have time off, they make sure they don't get fat.
Yeah.
So that's the only difference.
Kind of a mind thing. And let me ask you if I'm on the right track with this now. This is something that people don't get it, right? Because, so what Mark says in his training is, and you'll know this because you're an expert, it's a fallacy. There's no good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. It's the lipoprotein that they're riding on, right? High dense lipoproteins, and then LDL is low dense lipoproteins, but there's really only one cholesterol. Is that correct?
Okay, great. Let me throw it first back into you. So, what is the function of LDL and HDL? Do you know? Did he teach you why there's the two and what's the main?
Well, he said I think
what's
it's
the main difference between?
it's really carrying these cells, right? And that really LDL itself, if we did a proper test, we would go deeper into the blood work, and you would look for the large, fluffy LDLs that don't oxidate and cause damage to the arterial wall. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, no, absolutely. Here's sort of the key takeaway here that was published
yeah,
by phenomenal scientists quite a long time ago. LDL takes cholesterol from the liver,
correct. Yeah,
traffics it to the tissues.
carries it, right?
HDL traffics cholesterol from the tissues back to the liver.
Okay,
So when
gotcha.
you exercise a lot, your HDL levels go up because your cells, that all the ones that are getting the benefits of exercise, are now trafficking back to the liver to have resource exchange.
It's like
So there is no good,
he
there
called
is
it
no
like a
bad.
dump truck, right? It's carrying these things back to the liver to be processed.
Yes. So LDL key for all your tissues, HDL key to go back to your liver. So if LDL starts going high, that means the main driver of that is going to be that your tissues are requesting more cholesterol, because
Ah,
cholesterol is used in everything. It's used in steroid synthesis and every
yeah.
single membrane that you have. So it's extremely important that you have high amounts of cholesterol when you need it. If you don't, this cell can't regenerate, can't repair, or let's say the lining of your blood vessels, they'll scar. And so cholesterol, for whatever reason, gets this idea like it's the problem. Absolutely not. No,
No.
it's like saying the firemen are the problem when they come to the house. No, the firefighters are fighting the fire.
And
And so
are they finally realizing? I'm seeing this now that statins are no good. You're killing cholesterol, even the good stuff. I mean, statins are not a good way to
careful,
go.
don't say that too loudly.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that's right. They'll probably ban me.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so well, I'll just say this is that there's quite a divide in today's day and age, with some individuals where they clearly have the same they've come to the same conclusion you have, Cliff, right? They've recognized that, hey, why would I drug something and try to lower that's a key regenerative molecule?
Yeah.
They recognize it's a regenerative molecule. And then there's another group of individuals that really push the idea that you can't help yourself, you must medicate. And I see this almost like a speciation event that's occurring, because it's, the ones that are going to find their route to a healthy life will continue and have succession,
Yeah.
while the other ones will very quickly, I think, fall off the deep end, right? Like there is no growth in a system in which you are going against your innate biology, right? Rather instead of
Yes.
learning what your innate biology is. And so
Ah,
let me unpack it a little bit more, because I love the fact
please.
that you talk about cholesterol.
Yeah.
Cholesterol is pretty fascinating. So if you go get a fancy blood test, like a really
Yeah.
in-depth one,
The proper
well,
one. Yeah.
there's a lot in the market. I think in America you got quite a few, but is it 10x? 10x is pretty good. I've seen a few of them.
Yeah.
They will break down cholesterol, the carriers, into about 12 different proteins.
That's right.
So ApoA1 to 4,
Yep.
B100, you'll have C1 to 4, you'll have D, you'll have E, you'll have L, and you'll have M. So there's a lot that goes into these apolipoproteins.
Yeah.
And the importance in that is that Some tissues will have a high propensity of it. So I know an individual who stays awake a long time, stares at screens all the time. He keeps getting his cholesterol come back and very high. But when he got his fancy blood test, only ApoE was high. So showing that his brain is going to burn out or
Yes.
is requesting a high amount of cholesterol in order to
Ah,
maintain his activity.
yeah.
And so this is an excellent indicator because, like, hey, if you just have this general, hey, my cholesterol's high, my LDLs are high, then you might go about it quite a wrong way. When you know very specifically from the neural component, the brain component, that it's requesting a lot more, then you have to take a moment and be like, okay, well, maybe I do have to take a step back.
Let me
I
let
do
me
have to
ask you.
readjust how I'm living life.
Let me ask you a question. So when I switched kind of to, I cut down on my carbohydrates, and then I really switched to healthy fats, right? Avocado, eggs, coconut oil, and I got, make sure I stayed away from chemically altered oils and those things. So my LDL did go up a little bit, but my triglycerides stayed at 65, which is a good ratio, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely always need triglycerides along with interpreting the LDL. And keep in mind, if you had a certain lifestyle where you're consuming anything that's, say, available in the modern American diet, very likely that your body wants to exchange that. It wants to heal. So some cells don't turn over. Like once a
Yeah.
neuron is laid down, let's say a motor neuron connecting to your, let's say again to the fingers, the ulnar nerve. If any of those neurons, let's say, take a little bit of a hit, let's say you go too hard into the cold therapy,
Yeah.
you're the macho man, and I've had a few guys happen this where their nerve will get a little bit damaged,
Yeah.
right? They'll be like, hey, my nerves are still tingling a month out, and so when that nerve finally does heal, you didn't get a new nerve. What happened was that there's a slow process of exchanging what's present there, and you need to give yourself, like you said, good quality, high quality fat,
Yes.
real alive food. This is
Yeah.
really,
Nutrient
nutrition comes
dense
down to
foods,
very
man.
simple
Nutrient dense, right? You're getting your nutrients.
nutrition. Key part, but I would say it's even simpler than this. Where I would say that here's the big takeaway, and there's a few of us, I think, in the public sphere that advocate for this approach. Is you need to eat food that's living,
Correct. Living
right?
foods.
So
Yep.
when you have coconut oil, that oil still has an incredible amount of organic acids present in it.
I didn't
So
know
not
that.
only do you
Oh,
get the
that's still
saturated.
living? Oh my God.
Yeah, coconut oil is very good. So oils themselves, if they don't go rancid, if you protect them, which is not too
Yeah.
hard, if you have there's proper processing, they're extremely healthy, right? Still a live food. If you have pasta, unless it's fresh made pasta and pasta made by very, I would say, high caliber individuals, that's dead food. And how do I explain this in such a way? I have a little image here I use in my presentations where it's just a cell, like a little plant cell, and you
Yeah.
can observe that it has a little stream in the inside, like a little whirlpool.
Yeah.
When it's called cytoplasmic streaming, if anyone's interested to look it up. And so when the cell dies, let's say you harvest it and you say, okay, I'm going to stop you from decaying. You've stopped this life process that's occurring within the cell.
Ah.
And we know from metabolomics that you can take a metabolome of something that's alive, like right away, and
Yeah.
then something that's, say, a week old, you have a different metabolome.
Yep.
So it's easy to get calories out of dead food, and it's okay to have a certain portion of your diet be dead food, where you're looking for calories, right? Just
Right.
energy. But the majority of your diet isn't for energy. Energy is not that hard to find in today's day and age. Actually, probably never was.
Well, yeah.
What's hard to find is the nutrition that actually makes up you as the living being, that has nothing to do with energy, that has to do with your composition. And so this is where eating things that are alive, right? You said you have an avocado, that's alive. You have tomato, that's alive. You have eggs, that's
Yeah.
alive. The alive food helps allow that exchange within the system. So you mentioned about the LDL. Individual fasts for 3 days, then they has a massive carnivore meal, and their LDL spikes quite a bit, almost twice. So cholesterol goes, way into the red zone if you were to go get a blood test, and that you have the little portable pricks that you can measure your cholesterol in as real time as it gets. And within about 7 hours, 8 hours, that cholesterol comes back down to a normal level. And so you see that when you start doing this type of extremely attentive testing,
Yes.
that we get different stories about these biomolecules. It's not as simple as, hey,
No.
it's static and that's it. We're using one value. And so the proteins are relatively stable. It is important. It is insightful. Even still, that blimp and that increase is telling us something, because someone else can have the exact same scenario where they'll fast 50 days, they'll have their carnivore meal, and they'll barely get a bump up. And is that person in a better state or worse? Well, we'd have to compare that with other metrics alongside it, right? This is where the individual complexity starts going through the roof, and something that we don't like in the the clinical scientific world, of how much inter-individual variability exists.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The variation between you and the exact same guy that grew up in your neighborhood, your same age, but he's, whatever reason is, far outside the range. And you know what? We didn't measure him from age 15,
right.
21, 35, 40. We don't know if he's always been in that range or whether that's something recent. And so this inter-individual variability causes a lot of problems in interpretation analysis.
Yes.
This is what takes the extra effort from finding someone, a personalized individual, to do your analysis, is to be able to ask enough questions on the side to be able to put together a comprehensive story, either to figure out what things to worry about and what things to not, right?
God, that makes a lot of sense.
Example, that ApoE example is a great thing to worry about. That is something to action on.
ApoE, okay.
And to be able to switch your data around. You know, that value doesn't go up very much in anybody else. And so if it's elevated in one person, well, we'll treat that as higher risk value than waiting for someone else to publish a study for us to be able to action on it. Why? Because there's something called bioinformatics. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
No. Say that again.
So bioinformatics.
Informatics, okay.
Yeah, and so there are biological databases. One of my favorites is called the Human Protein Atlas. And these biological databases have been worked on for decades to be able to have as a resource for the greater scientific community. So if you have something going on, we punch in the protein and we have an idea of where it functions in the body. So in the Human Protein Atlas, we can take a look at ApoE. We're like, okay, it is only produced in the liver. And that's how we have confidence to know what to target and what to work around. You know, where does it go to afterwards in traffic? Well, we need more information, but there's more databases that do this. And so the most insightful information is actually the proteomic metabolomic data that comes out of your blood, or if anyone's crazy enough to go get tissue biopsies, or if they participate in an experiment and, they get the privilege of having that. But normally you're not going to go get tissue biopsies, right? In some tissues, you can't take a biopsy of the lung. No one's going to give you a piece of their lung.
No.
So blood value is by far the most easy, accessible piece of information that helps draw conclusions of all the tissues. Genetics is not that useful.
Right.
Genetics, you have the exact same genetics when you're born and the exact same genetics when you die. And though there's some really cool little tidbits in there, for example, like melatonin, the way it functions in your system, of whether certain types of carbohydrate or fat metabolism present within your genome. Often you don't need a fancy genetic test to figure that out either, right? And you don't need to spend the extra on the analysis. And for example, there's a lot of these like fit DNA tests. There really isn't any like great smoking gun of an experiment to be like, yeah, that's clearly true, right? The best predictor of, for example, height isn't 50 genes. It's going to be grandma and grandpa's height.
Yeah,
that's how we know what your height's going to be. Way better predictor by landslide. Yeah. And so genetics has been great in terms of understanding, like very particular metabolism of for example, drugs, very particular metabolism of a very specific, like for example, the carbohydrate aspect or melatonin. But it doesn't give the individual this great uplift of what they should be doing day in and day out.
Right.
And you're not going to be doing the exact same thing when you're, 14, when you're 30, when you're 50. You need to be adjusting to your day, your age, your lifestyle, what you're doing currently. Are you in the front of the computer all day, or you get to go outside? Are you with your grandkids? Are you playing tennis for the next 3 months? Your blood, however, is extremely indicative of what's going on in real time.
That's what's great about those tests, if you know what to look for. So, Mark's, and we'll try to wrap up here, but I could talk to you for 2 more hours. But like his primal law, he called them the primal laws of wellness, right? Which I think make a lot of sense. So he believes in these 10 things. See what you think. So he believes in eating meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. And he believes in staying away from poisons he would call grains, sugars, and chemically altered oils. He said to move a lot throughout your day, right? Be moving. Lift heavy things every once in a while. He uses a hex bar and does some deadlifting. Get plenty of sleep. And I know you talked about that, how important that is. And also do something at play, right? That you're doing just for fun. Not you're getting exercise from play. Get plenty of sunlight. Don't do stupid things that'll get you hurt or injured or killed, right? Like texting and driving. And then always be learning something new for the brain, right? A new instrument or reading a book. And those are kind of his 10 laws, which I think are so important.
I mean, I could comment on each every single one, but I think generally they're hitting the mark on what you need to be doing today and age to live well and healthy. I will make a comment on the grains thing.
Yeah, what is your opinion on that?
There's a quality of grain thing. So overconsumption on any one particular thing is not the best.
Right.
And grains in themselves is very easy to consume a lot of or have almost entirely as a full meal, right? People love grains and that stuff. But there's a quality of grain that becomes a key kind of component where I don't think the grain is to blame. I think agriculture is to blame.
That is right.
The reason I say this is because I have individuals that are celiac here in North America, but they have Italian pizza. They have, bread in Italy, but when they come back here, they can't. So is that celiac? I don't think so.
No, it's a different in the grains, right? It's a difference in what we do, right? I guess years ago we went to like a dwarf wheat, and we've done crazy things. When we had a loaf of bread in the 60s, 70s, it would go bad in 3 days. Now you can put it on the counter. It'll be there 6 months. It'll be still soft.
Yeah, and I don't think the actual the plant. I think that's actually what the chemicals are used around it. The
correct.
Processing.
Yeah.
This you strip it of everything and then you refortify it. I think that's a problem.
That's ridiculous.
But I do think even individuals that are eating a healthy grain, there is evidence over the last century that it's not the best food to eat as call it like your isolated main staple. So a little bit of grain seems to be quite okay.
Yep.
If it's of the highest quality, which today's day and age is not easy to get access to.
It's not easy to find it.
I love bread.
Yeah.
This is my cheap food, but I go out of the way to make sure I buy flour that's, as clean as possible.
That's
good.
I
do think that's actually a big part today, trying to find food that is, like not polluted, right? So we talk about all these kind of diets and things. Just the quality of food is first and foremost.
That's right.
And then how much you're eating of it. And everything else you mentioned there, absolutely, right? There's a big part. Do lift heavy things. I'd say the aspect of play is quite important. I noticed for the centurions that I've studied across my time.
What do you call? The centenarians? The centenarians, or?
I call them centurions. Like it's kind of like a little bit of a warrior, and they also made it to a century. And I
like that.
The way I kind of maybe phrase it is they're all religious without the religion.
Correct.
In which they have a lot of fun with life. They have a lot of gratitude and they have a lot of reverence for what's in front of them. And so it's almost like they're in constant state of play, right? When you're around them, they're making jokes, they're busting your balls, they're kind of teasing you in a fun way. They're trying to get life out of you, and they don't get hung up on things. This is where I say they're religious without their religion, because they don't get hung up on a particular belief. I've noticed, and what I have. This is my now bias. This is my 2 cents of what I would say I've come across is that when someone has a disease, I do think the root to start at is a belief.
Correct.
So a belief somewhere within a mental lapse led to a cascade that is now a disease. And so these centurions that don't really have any of these health issues, they don't get stuck and hung up on these beliefs that push them down this way. Rather, they allow this natural feedback to come where they experience their emotions and they say, well, is this good for me? No, okay, it's not. My emotions are communicating that something's wrong. Yeah. And they use that feedback to then, and so to them, there's a reverence of where these emotions are guiding me.
That's right.
And I think today's day and age, we've suppressed our emotions or we don't give them enough weight. Like I've spent, over a decade in schools, and I've not ever heard of the classroom that was going to go into and dissect, when someone is in a chronic fear state, how does that affect cortisol,
Yeah,
stress
that's
responses,
right.
adrenal signaling, hypothalamic axis? Nothing. But yet that this is a
You
consequence. What
know
about
it.
the other emotions?
Yeah,
Shame, guilt, envy, grief, lies, attachments. How do these things alter our physiology? And they clearly do. When you have that grief, it almost like you can't breathe. Like it's like a lump in the
that's
throat.
right.
That's the
Yeah,
description.
feel it. Yeah. Yeah,
And
so man,
so
that's my
that's a physiological response.
yeah. Your thoughts are so affect our biology and our cells. I mean, it's been proven over time. So, I mean, if anything, if you don't feel happy, do it for your own health. Fake it. Laugh. I know you talked about laughter. The people that laugh the most actually live the longest. So we know they might even have a bad lifestyle, but because of their attitude and how they are joyful actually affected their longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If I can share this framework,
Please.
it
Yeah,
might be useful as
please.
a framework for language, because I do think this is the name of the game today. The name of the game is understanding that language allows us access into different aspects of mind. And I
Yes.
would say mind is synonymous with the word space.
Space.
And why do I say mind is synonymous with space? Is because, I mean, I have no idea where your mind went during our conversation. It could have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
You could have thought about a friend that you didn't mention. You could have thought about your dad. You could have thought of mom.
Yeah.
What you shared is one thing, but your mind, there's no limitation of where it can travel. So mind and space are synonymous. And so where our mind goes is going to then be the first driver of what's going to be the consequence on the physical plane.
Ah,
So
yes.
everything that we have here in the present moment is a consequence, there is a mental precedence. So if we think of the mental world as this infinite potential, we draw from that infinite potential. You have 24 hours in a day, and there is no stopping it. The mental will go somewhere. It is your responsibility to steer it in a particular direction. And from that, what happens is a consequence of pulling in emotions. You pull in emotions.
Yeah.
If you put this idea that you're afraid of snakes and you see a rope on the ground, only you got afraid because you misinterpreted it for a snake, and that
That's
emotion
correct.
comes.
You
Other
created that in
individuals,
your
they get excited.
mind, and you have to purposely and intently focus your thoughts. Oh, so a real thing came to mind. You might get a kick out of this. So, my focus and my priority is this interview with you, and I'm excited about what we're talking about. But so while we're talking, however, a very large wasp came into the room, right, and it's on the window. And so normally in my day, I would be out of here. I would get my wife to kill it. But I'm so focused on this interview, I had to intentionally put that out of my mind and focus on you.
Nice.
That's
Nice.
kind of what you're talking
often
about,
love
right?
it.
I mean, your mind can get, drifted into something. But like you said, you create a fear that wasn't real. That stick, you thought it was a snake, and you felt the same emotions as if it really was a snake, and here it was a stick.
And hopefully that example exemplifies how the mental space pulls in the emotions,
Yes.
right?
No, it
And then
does.
emotions come into a physical experience. And so this is all of our existence, right? When we say the words mental, emotional, physical, they're okay words in order to be able to try and parse out this process that's happening, because it's happening simultaneously
Yes.
all at once.
All the time and all at once. Yeah.
And all at once, you have no choice but to participate. If you want to sit still, you're still
Yeah.
participating, right?
That's right.
There's not an option to do nothing. And I think once you come with that, there's a certain level of, call it euphoria or motivation, to be like, okay, well, I'm here now. I'm going to experience it. What did I come to experience?
Yeah.
And what I wish for people to experience is health, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're here talking about today. I think we are the sickest population in existence on this planet.
We are.
I don't think there's ever been a population that's been worse off for their health, yet in a time of possibly the most plenty, and it's quite a dichotomy. It's something of a paradox, in which hopefully the more conversations are had about it, the more that will be rectified, putting people towards, I think experiencing more life rather than cutting themselves off, thinking that they're only a physical flesh bag. Like the amount of individuals now that I've met that think that they're just the science says they're a physical flesh bag. I'm like, who is this guy? Science, put him in front of me so I can, slap some sense back into him, because nowhere in science does it ever say that. If anything, it only pushes the boundaries of how much we are all interconnected.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I went to the Rafa Nadal Tennis Academy in Mallorca last year because I always wanted to do that, and my wife was biking in Mallorca, and so we went together. She went on a biking trip, so I went to the Rafa Nadal Academy, and it was unbelievable. And there was a tennis fitness package, so in the morning we had a fitness thing, and then there was like 12 of us in the group, and man, we were going through these things, and man, I go, this is really challenging to me. This is really hitting me hard, but I'm doing everything. But then I realized, oh, well, the next oldest guy in the room was 40. Here I was 65, and so sometimes I forget. I still see myself as 35 or 40, right? So my self-image is not really in what's going on in reality, but I think that probably helps, right?
I bet your blood would only resonate with how you're feeling.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really want to go another hour, but will you come back on again? Because I'd like to talk about a lot of things we didn't cover that I agree with you on, that I've seen you on other podcasts, specifically about sleep and exercise and mindfulness and how that affects our health. And man, I think we're on the same mission that we could I wish we were the healthiest nation in the world instead of 60-some% obese and out of shape, but we're not. And where can people find you, or in any of your writings or your website, or where can we point people to learn more about cell health?
Yeah, you can find me, Daniel Tausan, easiest on my website, timelinesciences.com.
Timelinesciences.com? Okay.
Yes, we have one timeline we're all sharing, and you use science to describe that timeline, right? Your unique timeline. And that's what I do for people. I chart out their timeline with all the details they would like to bring forward, as you kind of see my breadth of expertise. And the only other platform really on social media that I'm ramping up, getting used to, is Twitter, or X.
X, yeah.
I am a heavy-duty scientist, and learning the different aspects of business and social media is now my new venture, and how to get good at that. But I do enjoy the one-on-ones in which I can, check the understanding, check where the person's at, so that we can then work from their level to make the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit, the most easy accessible, in order to make the biggest changes for
we can. We'll talk about that maybe in our next session or off. So hang around for a debrief, and like you're saying, you're getting into how to these one-on-one conversations. The one great thing about 10 years ago, you and I couldn't put out a broadcast that anybody in the world can access for free on several different types of platforms of it. But here we are, creating something that's evergreen, that someone can look back maybe a month from now and look at our conversation and maybe make a decision to change their lifestyle in a way that's going to give them many more years of life, or life in their years. So I think it's so important that, I learned from this conversation. Who knows who will probably affect in someone who's listening or checks in on it. So thank you for sharing all this stuff with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Small changes for big reverberations. That's the goal.
Man, I'm with you, brother. I mean, everything you said resonates with me 100%. And so I want to be respectful of your time. And any final thoughts, and stay for the debriefing, and we'll end the session. But Daniel Tausan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cliff.
All right, everybody, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if you're on a podcast platform. Hey, subscribe to the show, follow it, or whatever it says to do. And watching and or listening on YouTube, subscribe. It tells the computer that people are interacting, and they'll show it to more people who may need to hear it. All right, everybody, we'll see you at the next episode.